Hey, welcome back to another video. I'm Ivan Calderon, and today I'm gonna show you how to create an effective storage workflow for your beats. So I firmly believe that as a producer and beat maker, making beats and creating music is only half of the equation. There are so many other things that we have to be really good at, and the only way to be effective while balancing all that we do, in my opinion, is by staying organized. Now, there are many different ways to be organized as a producer, but one of the big ones is how you choose to store and maintain your music files. So then with that being said, today I'm gonna walk you through my personal file storage and creation system for my music that will not only show you how I myself stay organized, but also how I optimize my files for a smooth and fluid session with an artist. So without further ado, let's jump right in. All right, so jumping into my desktop, you're gonna see that I have a couple different hard drives here. Now, this won't be the case for much longer. I'm trying to consolidate into one really big SSD, but for now we have a couple that I work out of. So starting off, we have a sessions drive, and this is basically where I store all of my artist sessions and beats. This one in particular is a 500 gigabyte SSD. Moving up, we have my samples drive, and this is basically where I store all of anything that has to do with making music. Samples, loops, one-shots, and this one is a 2 terabyte traditional drive. Moving up, we have my content creation drive, and this is where I store anything that has to do with creating content. So YouTube, thumbnails, graphics, you name it. And this one is also a 2 terabyte traditional drive. Finally, at the top, we have my 5 terabyte desktop backup drive, which is basically where I back up these 3 drives to on a weekly basis and automatically using a software called Carbon Copy Cloner. I've done a review on this, so I'm gonna link it up top here, but just be aware that it is for Mac only. Now, at the very bottom, I have one more drive. Now, this one is basically a 8 gigabyte thumb drive where I store all of my licenses for my Waves plugins. But okay, today we're talking specifically about the sessions drive, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So once we open up my drive, you're gonna find 3 main folders: artist sessions, beats, and Studio One settings. I will be going over the settings and artist sessions folder, but for now, let's go ahead and take a look at the beats folder because that's what I'm assuming most of you are here for. So if we open up the beats folder, we're gonna find a couple more folders inside, and that's actually pretty much the theme of this entire workflow, so just keep that in mind. But we have a couple folders in here. The first one is called Finished, Not Finished is the second one, then we have Loops, and Other. So let's go ahead and take a look at them individually. In the Finished folder, we have more folders, and they're now categorized by year. Now, basically what I used to do, so if you take a look at the 2016 folder, I would basically dump all of the beats that I made that year into that folder. And as you can see, every beat had its own individual folder. And of course, I named it, with a specific naming scheme. But the problem with this was that, let's say, for example, I had an artist, I was in the studio with an artist, and they wanted me to pull up the latest trap beats that I made. The problem with this is that there's no identifier, right? So if I come in here, I could say, well, I think this one was trap. And then what I used to do is I have a folder here called Finished Files, which is where I would basically export all of the printouts, the exports, the MP3, the waves. So I would go in here, play it. I don't like that one. All right, go back. I think this one was trap. All right, let's do that one. Finished Files, play that. I don't like it. All right, let's go back. So as you can see, it wasn't a very fluid, friendly way to move through a session. So I've gone away from that. So now if we head back over to the 2020 folder, and excuse the dust because I haven't really made any new beats this year, but I have 2 main folders here, one called Masters and one called Beats Sessions. Now basically the Masters folder, you can call this whatever. You can call it exports, printouts, final files, whatever you want. This is basically where you're going to put all of your final waves and MP3s of your beats. Now, if you go into the Masters folder, you'll see that I have more folders, but they're now categorized based on genre. Now, these here are the 4 that I tend to make the most of. So pop, R&B, reggaeton, and trap. Yours might be a little different, but the idea is still the same. Now, the reason for even having this whole Masters folder to begin with is because now, if someone says, hey, show me your latest trap beats that you've made. Super simple. All I gotta do is go over to Finished, 2020, Masters, Trap, and then I don't know how it works in PC, but at least in Mac, if I have all my finished MP3 beats here, all I gotta do is click on the first one, hit the space bar, it starts playing, they don't like it, hit the next key on the keyboard, they don't like it, hit next, I'll take that one, you pull it out, next, and that is such a better way to work in the studio. Now the Beat Sessions folder, on the other hand, is where you are going to store your .song files, your FLP files, your Logic files. And this is basically here because if I ever want to go back and make changes to a beat, I want to have that session file accessible, but I don't necessarily need it to be where the final printout version of the beat will be. Now for me, having the final exported beat and the session file separate is really, really important because the goal a lot of times when making beats, aside from I guess creative expression, is to get them placed with an artist, and having those MP3s or waves separate by themselves allows me to run through them quickly to get them placed. But if I ever need to go back to make a change on a beat, those session files will always be here out of the way. Now, the one thing that I will say though is that I don't lease beats online anymore. So a lot of times the transaction with my beats is very in person, or at least over email with someone that I've built a connection with. So that's what this is built for. If you lease beats online, what I would do is keep a separate folder. Maybe you can call this one like beat leases, and here's where you would put all your beats that you're going to upload to your beat player online, and have the version with headroom and the version without headroom. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I've done videos on all of this, so I'm gonna link them down below. But that way you can differentiate. You have the ones that you lease online, and you can have maybe the ones that you're trying to get placed with whoever. But that is essentially my finished file folder. If we back up, let's go ahead and take a look now at my not finished. So if you click on this, we're gonna have more folders in here. The first one is called Beat Ideas, then we have one called Needs Arranging, third is called Needs Mixing, and the final one is called Needs Revision. Now basically for me, more or less, this is a visual guide to my beat making process, and it lets me know in what step I am in and where I need to go. So the way this works is that every time I fire up Studio One, I always make sure I place that file for whatever I'm trying to work on in the Beat Ideas folder. Now, whenever I'm making beats, I always try to start in the main part, the chorus, the hook. I build that out, and from there, I take parts away to create the rest of the beat. Now, you guys are producers, you know how this works, but not every idea gets fully finished. Maybe later on, but definitely not all at that moment. So what I do then is, if I'm not able to fully create the hook or the chorus part of the beat like I usually do, then I leave that file in the Beat Ideas folder. If I am able to create the hook, the chorus, but I'm not able to arrange it for whatever reason, maybe I got busy or whatever the case might be, I switch that file over to the Needs Arranging folder. Now, once I arrange it, then I go ahead and move it over to the Needs Mixing folder. And finally, whenever I'm done mixing, I send it over to the Needs Revision folder. Now, the purpose of this folder is because whenever I'm mixing a beat or a couple beats, I like to give myself about a day's worth of rest and come back feeling refreshed, and that way I'm able to see if the decisions that I made the day before are actually justified. So basically, whenever I mix a beat, I come back the next day and I take a listen to all of the mixes from the day before. If they all sound good in a bunch of different systems, then I go ahead and send those files to the finished folder respectively, and you guys know how that works. But okay, backing up again, the loops folder basically is just where you would store your loops. I don't make as much loops as I would want to, but I'm trying to make more this year, and this is where they would go. Now, if we open that up, we have a couple folders in here, and this almost mirrors the beat folder where you have a finished and not finished folder. So for example, in the finished folder, again, we have it categorized by year. I have nothing there yet, but that's where they would go. And then in the not finished, we would have loop ideas, similar to beat ideas, and then need mixing. Now, the one last folder that I have in the loops folder is drum loops for sample. The reason for this is because I find it easier to make samples whenever I have a drum loop playing in the background, because if you think about it, a sample is just the melodic portion to a beat. So then in here, I have a couple of different drum loops for different genres, and I can play those, create the melodic portion to that beat. At the end, mute the drums, export the melody, and that would be the sample. Now, last but not least, I have a other folder in this beats folder, and this is basically where I store any miscellaneous files. Now, the only thing that I have in there now is the session files to the YouTube intro music, which, fun fact, if you didn't know, the music that plays in the intros to every single one of my videos is an original beat, so there's that. Now, one last thing, I don't know how this works in the PC, but at least in Mac, you can always put shortcuts to folders in the sidebar here, which makes it really easy for me to transition between beats. So I can just click on here here, go to beat ideas, needs arranging, so on and so forth. And it also makes it really easy for me to drag folders and songs over to the next step of my process. So that essentially is the workflow, the process for my beats. And before I show you how all of that works in real time, let me talk real quick about the other two folders that I have here. Now, first up, we have the artist sessions folder, and this is basically where I store all of the sessions for artists that I'm working with, clients that hire me to either executive produce or produce their music. Now, this is very different from sending beats out. This is more so when someone hires me and they come into my studio and we work on music together. If I'm just sending beats, then I usually work off the beat folder. Now, the way this is organized is that I have a folder for every artist. Inside those folders, I have two more folders, one for projects and one for singles. Obviously, the singles folder is for anything that doesn't belong to a project. And if it does belong to a project, like for example, we did an EP together with him, that would be in here, the name of the EP. You click on that, then we have the name of each song in a folder. And if we click on one, let's say for example, we go to this one, I have three more folders inside. One for production, one for stems or trackouts, and one for mixing. Now in the production folder, this is where you're gonna have the .song file for that production session. So if you ever need to come back and change something, it would be there. Now, I've mentioned this before, but whenever I finish producing, I like to export my trackouts and then mix in a different session. So that is exactly why I have this folder here called original stems or trackouts. It basically has all of the trackouts for that instrumental, not counting the vocals. Last but not least, we have the mixing folder. And in here, you can see that I have different revisions. I like to keep a folder for each revision. The reason for this is because oftentimes what will happen is I'll send off a mix and they'll like it. And they'll come back and say, hey, I liked it, but can you maybe like raise the volume here or add more reverb or do this or do that? If you only have one file and you make the changes and then overwrite it, save it, and then you send it off, and then later on they're like, hey, you know what? I actually like the first version better. Can we go back? If you don't have a previous version already saved, it makes it really, really difficult because now you have to backtrack and undo all the things you did, and that can become really, really tedious. So the way that I handle that is that whenever I send out a mix and they have revisions, what I do first is I go over to the original session, duplicate it, go into that duplicate, make the changes, and then label that as version 2 and send that. That way, if they ever come back and say, you know what, I like the first version better, can we go back? All you have to do is go back to version 1, the first folder, send that, and you're good to go. Now, I will be using this folder less and less because I'm now starting to outsource my mixing to different people because again, I believe music is meant to be a collaboration, and also because I don't necessarily enjoy mixing as much. I rather spend my time producing, but that's a different video. But okay, last but not least, we have a studio sessions folder. Now in here is basically where I store all of my templates, all of my macros, all of my save settings, all of the things that make me really effective with Studio One, they get stored here. The reason I do this is because if I ever go to work out of somebody else's rig, they're not going to have my templates and my macros and all the things that I like to have when I work. So doing it this way, it makes it really easy because all you have to do is go to Studio One and redirect it to read from this folder here on my hard drive, and that way I don't have to recreate anything. I can just keep working. But all right, now that you've seen my storage system workflow for my music, let me show you how it works in real time. All right, so let's go ahead and open up Studio One. Let's pretend that I'm about to make a beat. Now on this screen, of course, I'm gonna pick my production template. Now I don't usually name the beat in the beginning. I usually do that after I have an idea of what kind of song it's going to be. But as far as the destination goes, that will always go in this beat ideas folder. So I'm gonna hit that, and okay. Okay, so I already have a piano pulled up here, so let me go ahead and just record something real quick. Okay, so let's pretend that this is as far as I got. For whatever reason, I was uninspired. I couldn't finish the beat. From here, I would just save it, and I would leave that folder in the beat ideas folder, so you can see that here. Now, if I would have gotten far enough to know what kind of genre this beat would have been, and I typically try to come into a session with an idea already, but let's say, you know, I got far enough to know what this would have been, I usually move it into one of these folders. The reason for this is because I forget what I make a lot of the times, especially if it's not fully finished. So if I ever come back and I'm in the mood to make, I don't know, an R&B beat, but I don't want to start from scratch, I can just go to the beat ideas folder, click on the R&B folder, and pick an idea from there. Now let's pretend that I finished the beat, at least the hook part of it, the chorus, but I didn't get to arrange it. In that case, I would just drag this folder from the beat ideas folder over to the needs arranging folder. Now from there, once I arrange it, then I can move it over to the needs mixing, Once I mix it, I can move it over to the needs revision folder. And then finally, once I make sure that it sounds good everywhere and that it's perfect, then they would go over to the finished file folder, and you guys again know how that works. Now, an important thing to note here is that if you're able to do all of these steps in one day in one go, then obviously you can skip a lot of these steps, but it's built also in a way to where if I can't get it done that day, I will know in what part of the step I am in. But okay, to finish this off, let's pretend now this is a fully finished, mixed, revised, everything sounds great. Now from here, what I would do is hit Command E. That brings up the export mix down window. Now on the destination, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select finished 2020 masters. Let's pretend this is a trap beat. Trap, and then we're gonna hit open. Now when it comes to the name, this is also really important, so this is what I do. So first I go up here and I put down the names of the people who worked on the beat. So I'm gonna put myself down, and let's pretend this is also a collaboration with my buddy Playhouse. So we're gonna put that there, little dash, then the name of the beat, so let's just call this one Nirvana. Then in parentheses, I'm gonna put down the key of the beat, so let's pretend this was an A flat minor, dash the BPM, I believe this was in, 120 BPM, close that off. And then in a bracket, I'm gonna put down the date when I made the beat. So today is January 16th, 20, close that off. MP3 file, 48, and then 320, which is the highest bit rate for an MP3, and hit OK. So now that my MP3 is categorized and placed where it needs to go, the actual session of that beat, I can just simply drag it over to the finished 2020, and then beat sessions. So again, using that same example from earlier, let's pretend that again I'm in the studio with an artist and they're asking for my latest trap beats. Super simple. Finished, 2020, masters, trap. Now from here, like I said, just go in here, press the space bar, that'll start to play the beat. If they don't like it, hit next, hit next, hit next, until something sticks. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Now, I hope this video helped you become, or will help you become, more organized and more effective as a producer this year. But as always, like this video if you like to subscribe if you're not already, but I'll see you on the next one.